Hello and welcome to Story Time. Many years ago, I ended my relationship with my parents, and it was in the middle of an ice storm, really. It was over a decade ago, so it's not quite raw, but it's still a thing. And I wanted to tell this story because I wanted to make a connection between a behavior that is infuriating and confusing and what we're all seeing right now, what many of us are seeing right now. If you don't know what I'm talking about, send me a message. I'll point you in the right direction. So in the middle of that ice storm, I couldn't find my parents, and they lived not far from me, and we couldn't reach them. The whole town had lost power, and it went on for like a week. So it was pretty dramatic. Trees were falling down, hydro lines were falling out. It was actually really dangerous to be outside. And the police were telling people not to go outside because what happened was the trees were just covered in ice, like a tiny little branch would be like that thick with ice, and the trees were falling down on cars, on people, things like that. So it was a pretty dangerous time, and I couldn't find my parents, and so because my mother refuses to use a cell phone. The only way to reach them is with a landline. So I was trying to call their home phone and no answer. So eventually my husband actually drove down to their house to check and see if they were okay. And he called me from their house, like from the driveway, to say they're not here and that their car wasn't in the driveway or in the garage. I was like, oh God, like, okay. So a few hours later he went back and checked again. He had left a note on the door and the note was still there the second time he went. So they hadn't been back. And I was like, holy smokes, like it was Christmas time. So there was a great chance that they were out at a dance or a Christmas party on the night before. And if they were driving home from the city, maybe didn't make it back because there was, the storm hit through the night and it was really, really bad. It was so bad. I think the town may have been under a state of emergency. I can't remember. So, by about 5 o'clock, I was like, I think I have to call the police. So I did. And the police officer, being in a small town, you know the cops. So I knew the cop that went down there. He called me from the driveway, my parents' driveway, to say they're not here. He said, I checked the garage again, they're not there. And while he was there, one of the neighbors came to speak to him. So we do have a witness to the fact that the police were at my parents' house looking for them. And so when my mother finally did call me like 7, 8 o'clock that night, she had her whole list of grievances about how hard it was to find a Tim Hortons that was open. I'm like, yeah, because we were in an ice storm and the town is shut down. And how inconvenient it was that trees had fallen down over their road and they had to take this big long route to get to the Tim Hortons that wasn't open. And then they had to drive to a whole other town to get, make the coffee at home. Everybody's got a coffee maker, like honestly. And, but my parents, my mother, I'm going to say my mother because my mother's very domineering and controlling. She really, even growing up, I was malnourished. Like there was no food, like there was, to survive the summer, being off on summer holidays, there was food, things like bread and lettuce. And so when I said, why didn't you just, like, why were you driving around looking for Tim Hortons? She's like, because I was hungry. It's like, well, make food at home, but I know they don't have it. They never have any food. So the police gave me some good advice. They had me call another police department to do a search on the cars and everything else, right? So this is now serious. We have 2 police departments looking for my parents. So when she does finally call me, I hear all the grievances and everything else. And I said, the police have been at your house looking for you because I haven't heard from you all day. And now I'm finding out that you were driving around and you actually drove past my street, like my neighborhood, to get to your Tim Hortons. And so that I was really unimpressed at that. I lost my shiz. I'll just say that. I lost my shiz. I've never been so angry in my life. And so the strangest thing that my mother said in that entire thing, because everything was on brand, the selfishness and the weirdness was on brand up until that point, because I've always known my mother is mentally ill, is that when she said, Well, first of all, she said the police have not been at the house. And I said, well, how would you know? You haven't been there. She said, we've been there. She said, we've been home. Nobody's been to our house. Nobody's knocked on our door. Nobody rang the doorbell. We've been home. And I said, but you just told me all about driving around all over the place, trying to find coffee, and then also spending the rest of the day at your neighbor's house, sitting by the fire. Like, she told me this whole big story about where they've been everywhere but in their house. She was adamant they were home and the police should have found them there. At the same time, they were at a whole other house, sitting by the fire, eating chili and drinking wine. To this day, she's adamant they were home, while at the same time saying they were somewhere else. And the reason I'm telling this story is I know that we're seeing this playing out in certain circles. We're seeing people saying things like, I don't talk about other YouTubers, but yet their whole channel is talking about other YouTubers. You've got people saying, I don't unsubscribe from anybody, yet they've made videos talking about who they unsubscribe from. So the reason this is important is that I know this is probably really confusing for a lot of people. Where you're like, I don't understand what's going on. Like, why? How are we having these two ideas at the same time that are complete opposite of each other? You're not crazy. That's the whole point. You're not crazy. The day that my mother told me that she was home and not home all at the same time, it's like what's that cat, the Schrodinger's cat, whatever it's called, dead and alive at the same time. I thought I was losing my mind. Like, I really thought, how do I, you know what I mean? Like when you have people, somebody saying to you, I don't do this, or I do this, and yet you have the actual evidence right there. You know what I mean? Like, if I said to my mother, what did you do that day? She'd be like, oh, we did this, and we were out there, and we had, you know, and then be like, but we were home. If it's like the police, if I mention the police, oh, we were home. So that's part of the gaslighting. That's the deny, rewrite history gaslighting that a narcissist does. And the reason I'm telling you this is I want you to know you are not the crazy one. You are not crazy. It is confusing, and I don't know if it's intentional or not intentional. Like, I don't know, but we're watching narcissists do their thing right now. And it's kind of fascinating. Well, at the same time, like I said, probably really confusing for some people. So just remember, you're not the crazy one. Not at all. Not at all. Okay? As ever, have a magical day.